LCTV is your nonprofit community media station. Please donate at lctv.org to keep us strong. Thank you.
Hey everyone, it's Talkin Town Talk. I'm Larry Seidlinger for LCTV, and today we're on the road at the Owl's Head Transportation Museum, and behind me is something really special. Toby Stinson, who's the executive director of the auto auction here, is going to join me in just a minute and tell us a little bit, but we got a special show coming up tonight because you're going to see something that hasn't been seen in a long time. So I can't wait to show you. Stay tuned, we'll be right with you. Okay, joining me is Toby Stinson. He's from the Owl's Head Transportation Museum. Toby, tell us what you do here and your title and all what's going on behind us here.
I'm a development officer and director of the New England Auto Auction here at the Owl's Head Transportation Museum. And tonight we are unveiling the most significant vehicle we've ever had in the history of the New England Auto Auction and reuniting an extremely rare and unique American automotive artifact with its original owner. And a wonderful piece of automotive history.
We're excited about doing this. Tell me, where did this car come from and who has it now?
Okay.
Well, besides you have it now.
Originally, this car was originally built for Shelby American driver Ken Miles, who unfortunately passed away. And immediately, GT350 project engineer and race project engineer Chuck Cantwell called one of his best friends, a relatively unknown person, to put in this driver's seat, and this car became originally the car of John McComb, who happens to be a longtime volunteer of the Owl's Head Transportation Museum. John is not the current owner of this car, but it was his first car. He jumped in it in September of 1966, immediately won 3 out of 4 races, and was significantly involved in helping Ford capture the Manufacturers' Championship for the first year of SCCA Trans Am racing. John went on to become the 1967 SCCA National Champ. This vehicle is one of the rarest Shelby Mustangs ever produced and is an extremely significant and winning race car. In over 30 professional races, this vehicle has 22 top 3 finishes from 66 through the early 1970s. And this is chassis number 12 of 16 built Shelby Group 2 Ford Mustangs.
So there you have it, folks. Carroll Shelby's 1966 Mustang. Really excited. We can't wait to pull the cover off this thing and show the world. Are you expecting a big crowd here at the Owl's Head?
We are expecting a big crowd here tonight for a lot of reasons. 1, because of the car, 2, because of the history, and 3, because of our love for our friend John McComb. And a lot of the artifacts you'll see on display here all summer long are from his private collection, trophies that this car won, photographs and things like that. We're really lucky to have a good friend of the museum, automotive author and historian, and celebrity personality Tom Cotter is going to be here introducing the vehicle, talking with John McComb, and we're going to have a lot of fun.
And this car is going to go on the auction block here pretty soon, I understand?
This car is going to be the feature sale of this year's 2022 New England Auto Auction here at the Owl's Head Transportation Museum, taking place August the 27th. Preview opens August the 24th, and there's just not this car. We have a lot of good, exciting automobiles, a lot of inventory for anyone interested at all price levels. If you want to spend 6 figures, we'll have a vehicle. If you want a really good, fun hobby car for you and your family for $4,000, $5,000, $6,000, we'll have a lot of good inventory, and it's a great, fun time. So.
Good. Well, folks, there you have it. So you got some extra cash. Come over to the Owl's Head Museum August 27th and have a great time. Even if you don't have any cash, it's probably still a lot of fun.
Best car show you're going to see all year.
So let's go to this feature show here and what we got to go in the unveiling of this beautiful automobile.
Good evening, everybody, and once again, welcome to the Owl's Head Transportation Museum. This is an extremely exciting night for us here, the staff, friends, family, volunteers, and people within the general automotive community. There's a couple people I'd like to thank first before we get going. First and foremost, I have to thank our staff, my friends, colleagues that we work with here today. Everyone who's familiar with the Owl's Head Transportation Museum knows that once we hit Memorial Day, between all of our events and our shows and all the kids' summer programs coming through here and the New England Auto Auction in general, between 2 events and on the eve of the truck show, Toby has this crazy crackpot idea of we have to do an event with a car. I said that and I quickly ducked, but without a doubt, no one hesitated and said, we need to do this, and we need to do this for the people we're doing it for. I also have to thank, unable to be here with us tonight, I really have to thank Mr. Mark Scalero for being a part of this, a big part of this. If I'm the dreamer, then he's the catcher of the dreams. And we look forward to him being with us soon come August. I have to thank, a big part of this is our coming New England Auto Auction that is coming up in August, the 24th through the 27th, sale at 27th. I'd like to thank our auto auction sponsors, Haggerty Collector Car Insurance, Plycar Automotive Transportation, O'Hara Corporation and Journey's End Marina, and also Stringo Automotive Transportation Solutions. If you haven't seen a Stringo, check them out. They're like an electric pallet jack where you pick up a car and move it all around. It's amazing. So check them out online, and they're going to be here with us at the auto auction. Tonight, to me and to all of us, is really about a celebration. It's a celebration of on a lot of factors. It's a celebration that the museum, 1 year removed from coming back from the pandemic, is still here, better than ever and growing. Our legacy is continuing. It's a celebration of true automotive history and heritage. This vehicle, as we'll hear later from a well-respected, awesome individual, Tom, is a true example of one of the most significant eras in American automotive history. And we're lucky to have it here on display at one of the premier automotive institutions in the United States of America. And also, it's very personal. To me, this is also a celebration of two very important, special people that everyone within the Owl's Head community and the Owl's Head Transportation Museum volunteer friends and community, ever since they came here about 10 years ago, have just simply adopted them as one of our own, and that's Mac and Vicki. The first time I ever met John and Vicki McComb, it was a crazy, snowy February day, and they were just two really nice, wonderful people that showed up with a Pierce Arrow. Welcome to Owl's Head in the wintertime. And from there grew an amazing friendship, kids' birthday parties at bowling alleys that they came to, stories like parents and grandparents, and just wonderful people. And what started out as one time, oh yeah, I used to race some cars, the stories continue and continue and continue. To Vicki one day looking at a book in our gift shop here saying, hey look honey, there's everyone here but you. Oh, let me see that. Behind the scenes and in front of everything else, two wonderful people. And in getting to know them and where this car came from, the more you understand the humility of these two people, the humility of John as a driver, a wonderful businessman, a wonderful marketing career, so much insight, recommends books for me to read, and I read them when I go home, and just a wonderful other parentary figure in my life. And Vicki is right there, a part of this as well. How this car came to be about the museum, I'll let Tom handle most of the details about this, but I've been bird dogging this for years. Former colleague of mine, we worked together, Catherine Pardo. These are crazy things we do when no one's around. Some February, March day came busting the office. I found it. What do you mean? I found John's car. What do you mean you found John's car? John's first car, I found it. From the very beginning, our whole quest was simply, this is John's first car. This is the car that created a legend. John is here. We're about history. We're about uniting circles. This car had to come to Owl's Head. That was 6 years ago. The auction, all these other things, I really did not necessarily care. Any angles I can work, but the goal was sometime, we have to do this right. The car has been out there in different ways. It was imperative. Our goal was to reunite and properly tell the history of one of the most significant eras in American motorsports history and American automotive history. And it was also to connect the circles. I believe in cycles, I believe in the circle of life. I think things are meant to be, and I believe that there was a reason that this happened. And I'm very honored and proud to present this back today. I had an amazing road trip a couple weeks ago. John, Vicki, and I went on a road trip. We survived it. Went on a quest, stayed in a hotel, had dinner, told stories, and went to see the car for the first time. And it was an amazing experience. And later on tonight on this screen, we'll be able to see some of that video. So I would like to introduce a a good friend of mine, a friend of the museums, a truly great automotive historian and author, to introduce, in our opinion, one of the most significant and rarest Shelby Mustangs ever built, that has true racing pedigree, one of the winningest SCCA cars ever to hit the circuit, started in 1966 and was dominated. This is, as Mac will say, this is a tool. It's a wonderful tool when you put a wonderful man behind the wheel. And I can think of no better person to explain this vehicle, put it in context, than our good friend, Mr. Tom Cotter.
Thank you. In every sport, for every superstar, there are thousands of people that aspire to get to that level. You know, you think about, for one Mickey Mantle, how many millions of kids played Little League, junior high school, maybe in college, never made it. But they had fun doing it in the long run. You know, for a Michael Jordan, can you imagine how many high school, college basketball players aspire to that level? It's the same in auto racing. You know, all of us, whether we're car enthusiasts or not, we know that Mario Andretti is a race driver. It just rolls off your tongue. You know that. You know that Dan Gurney is a race driver. AJ Foyt. These are just names that are part of our language. But there are thousands of other people who are racing that will never achieve that level, but they love it just the same. I know, because I'm one of those people. And another one of those people is this guy right here, John McComb. That John raced actively for 12 years as a professional race driver. He started in an MGB, which a lot of guys did back in those days because they were readily available, they handled well, and they were relatively inexpensive. But the people, so John raced from an MGB and then all the way up to IMSA, GTP. I mean, that's like the top level of racing. And he's raced everything in between. He's raced Ferrari. I looked this up today on the internet. Ferrari, March, Datsun, Jaguar, AMC Javelin, Cortina. He raced for teams Group 44, Roy Woods Racing, George Alderman, Mosler, Brody. But he was most famous for driving MGBs, and even more famous for driving Mustangs. And he was most famous for driving for the team named after himself, John McComb Racing. Now think about this, 1966, Carroll Shelby was the big deal. In the world, he had won Le Mans with Aston Martin, and he retired at a relatively young age and started to build sports cars. He birthed the AC Cobra. Oh my God, you know, an iconic car then and now, probably even more so, 289, 427. He fielded the Ford GT40 at Le Mans, and they won Le Mans, 24 Hours Le Mans in 66 and 67. And he also took what was called, or referred to as a secretary's car, a Mustang. A Mustang was basically a Ford Falcon with a prettier body on it. And he made it into a race car. The GT350 Shelby Mustang. The thing was this. Ford homologated Shelby's as a sports car. They had two seats. They got rid of the back seat, so it was a driver-passenger. It was a two-seater. And this new series starts in 1966 called Trans Am. Trans Am was for sedans with a back seat. So, what's Shelby going to do? The car that he's been developing for a year, he can't race in Trans Am. So they found a loophole in the rules, and they used a notchback. Now we all know what a Trans Am, a fastback Mustang looks like. A notchback looks like this. So a notchback looks more like a sedan. That you could race in Trans Am. So Shelby came out with a special version of his Shelby Mustang. It was called a Group 2 car, and it looks like they built about 16 of them in total. 7 of them were Trans Am cars, and the rest of them were rally cars. Well, there was one young guy out there who saw some promise in this car. It was V8. It was built by Shelby. It had power. And he thought, well, maybe I could make a winner out of this car.
and John McComb plucked down $4,995 plus tires to buy a 1966 Group 2 Mustang. It was basically an R-code Shelby Mustang, but without the fastback. Now remember, at this time, John had been, well, he'd worked for GM for 364 days. He had been a banker, and he owned a junkyard. He's juggled a lot of balls because he was raising a family. I mean, Vicky and John raised kids. They had all the, mortgages and all that stuff, but John also had a passion to be one of those racers. I knew of John before I met John. I mean, I'm just a geek, and I'm a Shelby guy and a Cobra guy, so I would read Car and Driver, Road and Track, Sports Car Graphic, and I knew this name, McComb Racing and John McComb. So when I was in the racing industry, I had a meeting with NASCAR at their headquarters in New York City. That's their marketing headquarters on Park Avenue. And I'm sitting in a conference room looking down over Park Avenue. It's a beautiful place. And this young guy comes in and he introduces himself as Andrew McComb. Wow. This is about mid-90s, I'd say. And so we started the meeting. It was about a new account that we're going to pick up, NASCAR as an account. And I said, Andrew, you wouldn't be related to John, would you? And he said, yeah, that's my dad. Well, suddenly the meeting took a turn. And all the people around the table that were with NASCAR or with my agency watched as he and I exchanged, tell me about the Mustangs. I mean, and I'm a barn find guy. I'm the barn find guy, right? I always ask, does he still have the car? I mean, I always ask that question. Might he still have that Mustang in a garage somewhere? But I didn't have to because Andrew said, we just sold his Mustang a few weeks ago. If I had just had that meeting a little bit earlier. 20 years later, my wife and I bought a vacation house that we live at in the summer in Boothbay Harbor, and I became a member of the museum here. And my first event was, I think it was probably the American Car Show, and I was sitting right over there. No, I'm sorry, I was walking by, and John was sitting in the shade. When that door is up, there's shade there. And John was sitting in the shade, and he had a table in front of him, and I didn't know who he was. I mean, John didn't look like what I remember him in Sports Car Graphic in '67. But somebody must have introduced me, or maybe he had a name tag or something, and I said, I think it was a name tag. Are you? Yeah, I'm him. What are you doing here? Like, I thought you were like in Kansas or something. He said, well, I was, but we liked Maine and we moved up here. And it was something because I had a couple of friends here. My wife was here and a couple of friends, and they watched as John and I just went back and forth and back and forth and back, because I had a lifetime worth of questions to ask this guy, and he had the answers. It was wonderful. So, we became friends, and now we look forward to seeing each other, a couple of times this summer. The '66 Mustang that's underneath this cover, John bought new and raced it in '66 and then part of '67 until his new Mustang came in. He bought a '67 Mustang Group 2 car as well. The '67s handled a little bit better, a little more sophisticated car, so this one went down the road. As race cars are like human beings. When they get older, they get fatter and slower. And so, they put flares on them and bigger wheels and stuff just to make them more competitive with more modern cars, and eventually they just time out. So this car eventually timed out and, was sitting in a warehouse or a field or something like that. But this evening is a real special evening because so often drivers are honored, and it's the human being, and maybe there's some pictures, but very seldom are the cars with the driver reunited. And then there are cars that are honored, and the driver's long since deceased. This evening is a real special moment for John, for Vicky, for this Mustang, and for all of us in this room. I called John's old friend Chuck Cantwell yesterday, and Chuck was the program manager for Shelby, the GT350 program, the Shelby Mustangs. And he remembered, he said, oh yeah, I remember. We used to both work at GM. And I remember we met at Waterford Hills Racetrack in Michigan. We both raced MGBs. And, but then when John got into the Trans Am, he said, you know, I remember John drove a school bus. He bought an old school bus and cut the back out and put a big door up there and pulled his Mustang inside the bus, and they could camp out in there and the whole deal. So he had some wonderful memories about that. And then later when Chuck retired from ultimately Penske racing and John retired from road racing, he said, I had the best time seeing him every year at Hershey. He said he'd bring a bus full of old parts and sell Pierce Arrow parts and all this kind of stuff. And we had the greatest time seeing each other there every year. John bought this car in 1966 and ran 3 Trans Am races with it. 66 was the first year of the Trans Am. By the way, if you don't know it, it's the best road racing series America has ever had. 1970 being the year for the best road racing in America. But so he ran 3 Trans Am races with this car. He took a first, a second, and nobody knows what the third one was. John doesn't. Oh, fourth. Oh, somewhere.
Somewhere in there.
I couldn't find it on the internet. But then again, he ran A production, which was an SCCA class. He ran the Daytona 300, which was a 300-mile race. And then he ran the 24 Hours of Daytona like 2 days later with this car. This car has heritage. It's almost a living thing. In recent years, this car has been discovered and has been slenderized again. It's got narrow fenders, the proper wheels, as if it were being raced right now. And you know, John and Vicky, as Toby said, John and Vicky were reunited with the car a couple of weeks ago. So they've seen this already, but you haven't. Hey, Toby, want me to stop talking and you want to pull this cover off?
Hey, Tom.
Yeah.
This car ran Mont Tremblant.
You can tell us that.
Okay. We forgot about that. I was going to bring my camera. We got, God, it's gorgeous, isn't it?
She looks beautiful.
Man, all right.
It's gorgeous.
If a GT350 is rare, this is much rarer because 7 of these were built. And probably none exist except for this one right here.
Well, Pete Talbot's car, that was my first Trans Am in a Shelby Mustang, is still in existence.
Oh, cool.
I can't remember the fellow's name that owns it, but a race that we forgot about, Tom, was this car took second at the Mont Tremblant Trans Am in 1967, and we were running in first place when the linkage fell off of the transmission.
John, why did you buy this car? You had an MGB. What was it about this car? How did you hear about it? Because it was so brand new. No internet. How did you find out about the car? Step over here.
You can hear me, right? I don't have any trouble with it. A fellow by the name of Pete Talbot called me early in, it was probably June of 1966, and he said, I saw you race the MGB at Daytona, and I'd like for you to drive with me in my new Shelby Trans Am at St. Louis. And I said, Peter, I've never driven anything but an MGB. He said, no, but you can drive this car. Shall I tell the whole story? Yeah. Well, Pete, they get here to our house in Hutchinson, Kansas. It's Pete Talbot, a car like this, and 2 kids that sat on our couch for 3 days and never said a word. Well, we had a little trouble getting there, but we got there, and the problem was that the first prize was $1,000. Pete had been indicted for bringing a illegal substance across state lines, and he was either going to pay a $1,000 fine or go to jail. Well, I was in first place at one time, and the doggone headers cracked and fell off. And I finished, what, third on that one?
Yeah.
And Pete Talbot went to jail. And Vicki points out that we've never heard from Pete again. Anyway, there's one thing I want to say about my bride, who was with me the whole time. Because I said to Vicki, I'm going to buy this car because it's my trip or my ticket to professional racing. And Vicki said, okay, we'll do it, but I have to go too.
Wow.
And she's been to every race I've run except for... She's given me two wonderful sons, one of whom Tom knows. And those boys were born in January because she had to be able to travel to the races in February. Now, where do we go from here?
Oh boy.
How do you top that, right?
All right, so Talbot's car, you borrowed that, you used it,
No, I only ran that one race.
Right, so did you come home and say, I'm gonna buy a car?
I called Chuck Cantwell.
Okay.
You know, Chuck and I guess, anyway, I called Chuck and I said, I want to buy one of these things, and he said, there isn't one. And, I said, well, all right. So a little while later, the phone rang. It was Chuck Cantwell, and he said, there's a car available. And I bought it. It was probably in one way very dumb and another way not, because there were only 2 Trans Ams left. And I got the car, and we took it to Continental Divide Raceway. Beautiful racetrack, about 6,000 feet in just north of Colorado Springs. And Ron Grable was there in a factory dart, and Ron was eventually national champion. And I couldn't, I was running second behind Ron because I couldn't get the silly thing in first gear going onto the straightaway. There was just too much going on. And it didn't have synchro mesh. So the second to the last lap, I figured out how to get it into first gear and won the race.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Good deal. Good deal.
So then 2 weeks later, we go to Fort Worth. 6-hour race, day-night thing, and in the rain. And I started the race. How many stories do I get to tell? When you start leaving, I'll quit.
See how shy he is? Yeah.
So I qualified second. It was a Le Mans start. Charlie Hill.
Kemp?
No.
Rainville
was the factory driver for Chrysler, and he said, you're younger, you're faster. He said, you just go up the outside and I'll go up the inside and we'll just not hit each other. Well, what nobody knew was that at Fort Worth, it was a drag strip that was this wide and a return road that was this wide. So the normal line is to get out and do this. But not at Fort Worth, you go right up the inside. So the silly old fox got me on that one, and to the day he died, we saw each other, we'd say, you take the inside and I'll take the outside. So anyway, we went 4 hours and I took the last 2. I was in third place when I took over the car, and 2 hours later I won the race by 6 laps.
Man.
It was in the rain.
Man.
The only driver in history to do that. So I've been asked if there was a pressure at that time, and the answer is no. Shelby sent a car with Don Pike, whom we all thought was Gregory Peck's brother, but nobody believed it. And John Timanis, who was later a great pal of ours. And they tried to beat me, but I was, as you said, Tom, the car got a little wide. So anyway, we won that race, and then things got busy at Shelby's. And they I think, built a couple of new cars. And Jerry Titus won the last race at Riverside. I had a little trouble when I got in the car. I was way behind. But we drove like hell, if you'll pardon the expression, and got our picture in the magazine.
Man.
That was the sports car graphic. Okay, I'm
Let
done.
me, no, you're not done. That magazine, by the way, is in the last case over there. So if you want to see what he's talking about, it's on the cover of the magazine. So you had this car, you bought it in '66, halfway through the season. You sold it in '67 when your new car came in. Why'd you order the new car?
The '67 car was a wider car, and just to give you an example, I did 166 miles an hour in this car at Daytona. The '67 car did 185.
Wow. Wow.
I didn't get the car, I didn't get the '67 car until July 4th. We'd had it flown in. Now, if you can imagine, TWA flew that thing from LAX to Kansas City, and it was a 90-hour deal. And you couldn't get it for 90 hours. And my crew was sitting in Kansas City like, and they wouldn't let them have the car. But we won our first race then. It was a SCCA national race at Ponca City, July 4th of 1967, and then went on to win the national championship that year.
Man. So you had this car for a year or so. Do you remember, how much you paid $49,995 for it plus tires? Do you remember how much you sold it for and how much you paid for the new car?
I paid the same amount of money for the new car. I sold this car for what, $2,300? It was an old race car, folks. Come on. If any of you are familiar with Ford racing, Tom didn't mention that the first World Championship was in what they called the Daytona Coupe. And where was I going? Oh, yeah. At the end of that series, that year, there were 5 cars laying out behind the shop at LAX, 5 Daytona Coupes, and Shelby said to any and all of us, you'd have one for $5,000, but nobody wanted one because it was a retired old race car. What did the last one sell for?
I think Fred Simeone paid $9 million for his.
I heard 10 million too. Anyway, it's a crazy thing. Folks, we didn't know what we were doing. I was a rookie. I'd never driven anything like it. I took to it like, in fact, qualified second the first time I was ever in the car. We're just racing, having a good time, winning races.
Wonderful. Does anybody have any questions for John? This will be the only chance you'll have like this.
Well, I'm not going anywhere.
Oh, okay.
One more question for John before we go, because I know people want to hear this. Describe how you had to drive this car and the mistake you made. He made one mistake in his life one time, first time with this car at Daytona, going down the backstretch. How do you drive this car, and what was the mistake at Daytona you made you never do again?
An MG is driven looking over the door. In other words, sideways. So is this. And Toby's talking about 166 miles an hour down the back street at Daytona. There's a wire catch fence. and every 10 feet there's a steel post holding up the wire. And I made the mistake of looking out the right side, and all I saw was a wall of gray. And I've never looked out the other side again in my life.
Wow.
We'll be around all evening. The museum is open to everybody. Please take the time to walk around, check it out. I'm going to open the hood here a little bit so you can see underneath, which, as John says, the sweetest sound in the world is a 289 V8 wide open. We do have video here, which we'll turn on, which we took when we brought John down to Massachusetts to see the vehicle for the first time in a long time, reunited. He jumped in, started it up, and it's amazing to see that. So he's here to talk to you. We're here to talk to you. Enjoy yourselves. I think now the volunteers are going to start working on cars. Feel free to explore the museum, have a drink, have some snacks. But once again, amazing night, and thank you all for being here to reunite this piece of American history. Spread the word and get your popcorn ready come auction time. It's going to be a great summer here at the Owl's Head Transportation Museum. Thank you for being with us.
Okay, because you can get the big breaks if you can afford them or find them. We ran the Lincoln.
Yeah, I mean, they're saying it goes to both kind of.
I'm all right.
A Shelby Mustang and an open string. I got off the westbound jet and got into the southbound Cobra. Although I don't know what it is. I had it last year. All I did was get in my buddy truck.
LCTV is your nonprofit community media station. Please donate at lctv.org to keep us strong. Thank you.